We're going to bring in NBC News White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell, who joins us now. And Kelly, as I prepare to set you up, we'll note that John Kirby, Pentagon spokesman, tweeted, "We can confirm an explosion near the Abbey Gate of the Kabul airport has resulted in an unknown number of casualties." What's happening right now at the White House? We know the president has been briefed on this. What else can you tell us?
Well, you're covering a lot of what we know, to be honest, Joe. These are those early moments where there is a volatile situation. There is a limited amount of information that's coming out, in large part because those who have access to that information are meeting with the president. I'm told he is in the Situation Room, has been there with his national security team. That gives him the ability to communicate with commanders on the ground, both at the Pentagon, certainly the entire sort of leadership team there, as well as those commanders on the ground running the operation in Kabul, allows him to be in touch with the CIA and all the apparatus of the federal government to get as much information in real time as possible. We have been asking about the nature of casualties. In a densely populated area, we know the crowds that have been around the airport. We know that has been a choke point. We know it has been the only way out to get to the evacuation site. It is not surprising there would be injuries related to this blast. What we don't know is the involvement of any Americans. We don't have any information yet on who was injured, how seriously, and so forth. One of the questions would be the U.S. military personnel. They have been staying within a certain boundary at the airport. A blast, by its nature, would largely include area outside. One question we will ask is, are U.S. personnel going out to try to deal with that situation? That will defer to the Pentagon for any assessment they wish to give. In a larger picture, this is critical because the U.S. Embassy in Kabul had warned Americans through the means in which they are communicating with Americans, which has been phone and text and email, to not be at these gates. There was enough credible intelligence obtained by the U.S. and partner nations to suggest this was a real credible threat. Now, we've seen it borne out by events, presuming that these blasts are in fact tied to these incidents of expected and reported terror. So what does that mean? Perhaps more Americans waiting to get out were not there. We'll have to see how it goes. Certainly, Afghan civilians were still crowding in that area. Perhaps Americans, too, we don't know. But it had not cleared out. Now, the warning was in part because of the concern about the potential that there could be an ISIS-K attack. They are enemies of the Taliban, enemies of the U.S., so that's a sort of confluence of events there. The president had been using, as part of his calculus about the withdrawal, that threat as one reason to stick with the August 31st deadline, to remove U.S. forces and to conclude the evacuations, in part because of ongoing Taliban cooperation. And every day on the ground, the president said, was a day of risk for American personnel. So at this point, we don't know of any changes to the president's schedule. We know that the Israeli Prime Minister, Naftali Bennett, is due to meet with the president today. We've seen signs of the Israeli delegation being near the White House. We don't know if there'll be any change because of that. So it's a fluid situation. We've got our team both tethered to cameras and in the West Wing trying to gather information. And more as we know it. But when you look at what this means to the evacuations, one thing to consider is the president had asked for contingency planning from the Department of State, the Department of Defense, in case there were interruptions to evacuations. One cause could have been disintegration of the Taliban relationship. We don't see evidence of that in a great degree. Bad weather could have been a function of slowing things down when you're talking about aircraft, or this terror threat. So a question will be, if evacuations have to be slowed or halted because of events on the ground, will they extend? We don't know the answer, but those are some of the questions that we will be pursuing as we go forward. Joe?
Yeah, Kelly, and that is, I guess, one of the main questions that I know we're going to be asking about. But was there ever a situation, do we get the impression, where if things got delayed evacuating people because of a situation like this, that might be the reason the president delays the August 31st deadline and pushes it back? Or might it just really strengthen his resolve to say, no, we got to get out of there now, even if we don't get as many people as we thought we were going to get by the Tuesday deadline?
Both may be true. What officials have been telling us through the briefings we've been having, the president's public statements, as this is the calculation that he has to consider. with advice from his military leaders, as well as CIA and intelligence flow of information, and the full complement of his national security team. Does it make more sense to protect American lives by getting out more quickly, meaning U.S. military personnel, embassy personnel, and so forth, or is the obligation to extract U.S. citizens and allied Afghans enough, if I can even use the word enough? Is that the compelling argument to try to stay beyond August 31st? Now, there have been ongoing negotiations with the Taliban. Could that even allow for extending? It's all very sensitive, and one of the issues is talking about this stuff at the level of the president or the U.S. government always changes the circumstances. We can talk about options the president may have. For him to do that publicly could incite an attack. It could change the dynamics on the ground. So they have to be very, very careful about that. But all of that is on the very heavy plate in front of the president to consider. What's the urgent need right now? Lives in jeopardy. What does the blast, or blasts plural, do to the evacuation process? And what comes next? Those are hard questions, and we'll be trying to track and fill in as many of those blanks as we can.
All right, Kelly, we know you're standing by, and will give us the latest as soon as you have it.